Today's reading includes Psalm 8, and I'd like to focus on one particular verse that I find peculiar in this particular psalm. Psalm 8 verse 2 reads, "Through the praise of children and infants, you have established a stronghold against your enemies, to silence the foe and the avenger." Now, I find this pericope fascinating because it seems oxymoronic. It is through the weakest vessels, namely children and infants, that strength is established. So what is it about the praise of children and infants that establishes strength? Or as the King James Version puts it, perfects strength. I suggest that what makes the praise or the uplifted voices, if you will, of an infant or child strong is the response of a parent. Parents have an innate ability to hear the cry of their child and will usually move heaven and earth to reach them when they are in need, and all the more if they are in danger. Thus, the strength of that vocalization is the imminent response of a parent. Now, consider the oft-used metaphor of God as parent. Recall an incident within the very first family in the biblical narrative when Cain murdered his brother Abel. Scripture says his blood cried out from the ground. God heard. Also consider the cries of the children of Israel in slavery in Egypt. God heard. God heard their cries and sent a deliverer. Throughout the biblical narrative, God responds to the cries of God's children by acting on their behalf. Those of God's children who are impoverished, persecuted, abused, neglected, and marginalized are at the forefront of God's attention. God's preferential option for the poor compelled Jesus to focus his mission and ministry on the poor, the disabled, the imprisoned, and the suffering. Today, many of God's children are crying out in anguish as the structures of society press down upon them. They cry out for God to be near to them in the midst of their plight. Their cries do not fall on deaf ears. God hears. God hears, and God has called us to be God's hands and feet in the earth. So it is our job to respond. So I sing this brief song on behalf of suffering humanity today as I sing, "Be near, oh God, be near, oh God.